Hi, Standers. This is Sheila Hollinger with Marriage Revealed Ministries. Thank you for joining me for another message. Today, we are going to talk about transitions. And this message was brought about because I am back to transitioning from summer into being a car loop mom, back to school. And it's always a big adjustment in our home. I do car loops for my 3 children, and that's about 3 hours of my day sitting in a car. It's 4 times a day, dropping kids off to 2 different schools in the morning, coming home, and dropping the other 2 off. So it's four trips a day. And as I was doing this, sitting in the car, there's no reception, so I don't have a phone to be on the phone while I'm waiting for the lines to move, and my radio doesn't work. I don't have a radio in my car. So I had a lot of time this week to just ponder this transition and let the Lord speak to me, this has been my life for a few years now, as I sit and I use this time to pray. But this was a little different of a message, and I want to share it with you. So when we are forced into doing something, okay, we're going to say standing, right? We're all forced into this season of where the spouse is making a decision for us, for our family, taking us in a direction we don't want to go. That's a transition, a huge, huge transition. And how we handle transitions is we either fight them with everything we have, and that can make it really difficult for us because, fighting, we'll learn real fast that fighting and trying to force our spouse to do something that they're not ready to do is going to cause some problems. We can also fight God, because God knows this is a transition. He knows this is a season. I spent the very first, I would say a lot of my stand, I spent fighting my spouse, fighting God, fighting myself, just fighting, arguing, always fighting fear, worry, not accepting. And that was one of the messages that God would say to me all the time was, you're fighting me on this. You're fighting the time. You're fighting to force me to make this go quicker. You're fighting me to get out of doing this, when I'm trying to tell you, if you will just embrace it, accept it, embrace the journey, it would go so much easier for you. And that was one of the things that he would always tell me. And I would be like, but God, I don't want to embrace this. I don't want to accept it. I don't want to agree that this is okay. And that was one of the messages that God was trying to tell me was, he's not telling us that it's okay. When you embrace something and accept something, you're accepting certain things while you're also saying this isn't okay, right? So you're embracing and accepting this season of transition, that you're giving God time. You're yielding over control. You're saying, God, none of this is okay. My spouse is rebelling. My spouse is in darkness. My spouse is choosing, selfishness. And none of that is okay. But I'm going to accept and transition into the season of my life where I have to understand the journey. I have to understand that because this wasn't my choice, I would have much rather my spouse worked everything out, going to you, turning to you, but obviously that wasn't their choice. It didn't work. Maybe they tried. Maybe they couldn't connect with you. There's just different reasons why we're blocked, why we just are not able to go to our Savior and get the help that we need. And I was one of them in the very beginning. No matter when I got saved, no matter how much I tried to go to God for help, there was just too much brokenness in me. And there was too many issues on my part. Self-hatred, self-loathing, unworthiness, shame, guilt, condemnation, all of these things that when I would come to the Father would just interfere, right? And because of those places in me, they opened up the doorways to, unbelief, fear. It opened up the door to the enemy. I also had bipolar. That opened up the door to demonic influence. There was just so much interference. And it was just so hard that I chose easier routes, right? I chose the non-God way to cope. So this is what a lot of our spouses go through, is they might have tried going to God. They might have tried going to church. They might have tried these things, and they felt it just made it worse, or they weren't getting the help they need. It just wasn't solving their issues. This is not a fault of God. It's nothing to do with God not meeting their needs. It's just for some people, it just is just hard. And I was one of them that I would walk away from God angrier at him, really frustrated and angry that, basically saying, God, why is eating solving my pain, but opening the Bible is tearing me apart? There was just too much interference. But that didn't mean that God didn't have a plan. It didn't mean that God wasn't working. It didn't mean that God was not already seeing everything that was going on with me. He was helping me. He was changing me little by little, right? And I didn't see much of it, and I didn't understand much of it, but I do know that a lot of my pain was getting deeper. I was getting more frustrated with not changing. I was being exhausted by the constant coping with the wrong things. It was wearing me out. It was wearing me down. Where once I was fine with using food, sleeping, depression, I was fine with that, right? In the beginning, when I was much younger. As I got older, no, it wasn't working anymore. Food wasn't satisfying me. Running to use different things to take away my pain, like sleeping all day, wasn't working. And that's what God counts on. That as he's changing you slowly, you start to become dissatisfied with things that used to satisfy you. Jeremiah 29:11 through 13 says, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will hear you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. There was so much interference, but God says he knew the plans. He knew the plans for welfare, to give me a future and a hope. I'm walking in that right now. I'm walking in it. Where 10, 20 years ago, when I was an absolute mess, I didn't feel hope. But God says he had plans for future and hope for me. He knew what was coming. He knew how to handle this. You have to understand, and you have to embrace this transition in your life, that God has plans. He's working it out. And it doesn't look like what you think. If I go back 10, 20 years ago, before my storm started, I was such a mess. I didn't have hope, but God did. I didn't have plans, but God did. I didn't see anything good coming out of my life, But God did. And that's what matters. We have to trust him. We have to trust in who he is. We have to trust in his word. Proverbs 3:5 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. That's what we do. We don't trust God. We trust on our own understanding. We trust on what we see. We trust on what things are going worse. We trust what we feel. And all those things interfere and make us fight him. When all he's saying is, do you not know who I am? Do you not understand how much I love you? That I have plans for you to give you a hope. Plans for your future. Plans for your welfare, not for evil. One of the greatest things that I ever found out about God that just changed everything about how I understood him was when I came to the realization that God was for me, not against me. That meant that even in the pain of him pruning me and cutting away things that were bad for me, he was doing it to save me. A lot of you take the pruning so personal. You take everything like God's out to get you, like God is trying to hurt you, trying to punish you. He's trying to destroy you. But that's not who God is. You're trying to make God into something that he's not, right? For you who are a parent, when you take away something from your child, when you say, shut that off, it's bedtime, are you trying to destroy your child? When you take away food that's not good for them, are you trying to destroy your child? Now the child thinks so, right? Sometimes we face God like a child. God, you're taking this away. How dare you? I'm enjoying that. That's part of something that I love. Why do you have to take away something that I love? Why do you have to do this? It's because God knows something that we don't. God is for us. God is not vindictive. He's not mean. You're not telling your child to go to bed because you want to spite your child, hurt your child. You know that they need that sleep. You know what's good for them, right? But they don't see it like that. They don't understand. They don't have the capacity, the mentality, the maturity. They're still stuck in that immature state, right? But we're not. We understand why we tell them to go to bed. We understand why we say, stop, you're done with that food. You've had your limit. We understand that. We need to start looking at God as a parent who loves us, cares for us, and everything he's doing is for our good. And our spouse's good. Now, when you have two children, sometimes you have to say to one, I'm sorry, but I have to take this away from you because your brother or sister can't handle that. You know, we just had recently, we had a neighbor invite both our boys to the park, to a swim park. One of my sons was really sunburnt. And I had to tell the neighbor, nope, they both can't go. Because I was not going to allow one to go where the other one wasn't going to go. So, was it fair? Absolutely not. But sometimes that's what God looks at the both of you and says, I'm going to have to take this away from you. Not because you deserve it to be taken away. Not because I'm, but because I'm trying to work with your partner, your one flesh. Your spouse. This, if I give this to you, it's going to harm them to a degree that I can't let them be harmed. Sometimes that happens. Right now, you're in a season where you're being harmed to save your spouse. But God isn't going to let that go to waste. He's going to say, you know what? Your spouse is going through this. I have to let this happen. But let's use this to our advantage. Let's use this to change you. Work on your pride. Work on your trust issues. Let's use all of this to change who you see me as. Change your understanding of me. So if you think God's just going to put you in a season of prune, and not let it bear fruit, where he's just going to put you in a dormant stage and nothing's going to come out of it, that's not God. God doesn't prune just to throw that plant away and toss it. That's not who he is. God is so about prospering, about your welfare, about your plans, about, of giving you the best chance at life, the best chance of being in a place where you can know him, love him. If his whole desire is for you to be in a relationship with him, then you have to understand everything he's doing is purposed toward that. His purpose is not to push you away and make you hate him or lack trust or confidence or get to know him. That's nothing about who he is. So you need to start looking at God through a different understanding and saying, God, I don't understand this. This hurts, but I understand something about you, that you are for my welfare, for my good. You know what you're doing. I have to trust that you know what you're doing. Philippians 4:6 says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and pleading with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. The word for do not be anxious is right here. It means to be divided, pulled apart, go to pieces in different directions. It means to give too much care to. So let's talk about that. Do not be anxious. Do not give too much care to something that's causing you to be anxious. So I'll give myself as an example. I gave too much care to being happy again. I gave too much care to being secure. Too much care to being in a place where I didn't have to be hurt. I didn't have to suffer. To me, that's all I cared about. I didn't want to be in pain. I didn't want to suffer. I didn't want to give God the time that he needed to work on my husband. I wanted things to go back to normal. To me, that was a priority. I wanted everything to go back to normal because I didn't want to be afraid. I did not want any of what was happening in my life to keep happening. I cared about that so much that I fought God tooth and nail. Basically, in a demanding way, God, stop this right now. Turn this man right back around. Make him give up this place that he's in. And that's all I cared about. To where I was fighting God, demanding God, telling God he had to do it my way. And it was causing me exactly what the word is about. Causing me to be anxious. I was divided. I was pulled apart. I fell to pieces. Exactly what it says. Because I cared about the wrong things. When you care about the wrong things, when you're caring about you more than anything else, you're going to be pulled apart because guess what? You're fighting God. Because God cares about both of you. He cares about both of you. And the other thing that you might even not be considering is you might not be as strong in faith as you believe you are. You might be a lukewarm Christian doing your own thing. You might be a cold Christian, serving yourself, living life for yourself. And you are in jeopardy of hearing the words, "Depart from me, I never knew you." Why would Jesus say that to you? He's going to say it to anyone who lived their life for themselves and didn't put God's will first. And that's the greatest concern, is that you wake up every day and you say, what am I going to do for myself today? God, this is what I'm telling you I'm going to do. Instead of, God, what do you want from me? And then saying, you know what, God, ouch, I don't want to do that. But I want more to do your will than anything. So help me get there. Help me surrender my stubbornness, my fears. Sometimes it's fear that doesn't want us to be uncomfortable, so we don't want to do what God's asking us. There's a lot of things. Sometimes there's demonic strongholds that are interfering. There's shame issues that are interfering, fear issues, a lot of different things. Pride. There's a lot of different things that can cause us to not want to surrender to God. You know, there's anger issues at God. God, I have given you this. I've done everything. I've checked off every box. I've done everything you've asked me to do, and nothing has changed. You know, my spouse is still this. I'm still this. Our situation, our finances are still this. So many different things. I'm going to jump in right now before I forget. Tonight, we are having a guest speaker, a couple, share their testimony. It will be recorded. So if you'd like to be part of that Zoom meeting and come in and listen to their testimony, only people in Zoom will get the privilege of asking questions at the end. If you're just going to watch the recording, you're not going to get to hear the questions and the answers at the end because we're not going to record that part. So I encourage you to come on tonight. It's Eastern. It's 7 o'clock Eastern, and this is being recorded August 12th, 22. So, yeah, I just wanted to share that real fast. If you are part of our Zoom notification list, then you're going to get that Zoom notice with the link to the Zoom. All you have to do to get on the notification list is email me. Everything is in the description of all the videos. My email, all of that is in the description of the channel. So you just email me and say you want to be part of the Zoom meeting, and I'll get you on that list. Okay, so back to the message, back to transition. So I want to share something. One of the biggest things that I had an issue with in my storm was when my children got sick. And I would get really in my flesh about having to take care of sick children. A lot of the times when my 3 children were sick, I was sick. And I would get very angry and bitter that he gets to go out and have fun while I'm up all night with these 3 sick children. Right? And so a few years later, after we were restored, I was sitting in my room, and I had 2 of my babies with me. I call them my babies. They were older by then, but they were both laying in my bed with buckets. And God said to me, remember a few years ago, you were in the same exact situation and your husband was out and you were sitting up texting him all these horrible, flesh reactions about, I'm sitting here and you're out having fun and I've got 2 sick children, and I'm sick. And remember that? And I said, oh yeah, I remember. And God said, you're in the same situation, except, your husband's asleep in the other room. And I started thinking about it, and I thought, yeah, I was so bitter a few years ago that he wasn't in this room with me, staying up with these children, right? Caring for these children, but he got to do what he wanted to do. But yet 3 or 4 years later, I'm in the same exact situation, and I made the choice, and I told my husband, go sleep in the other room, because you've got to get up for work tomorrow. Go ahead, go. I want you to go and not be part of this. So I was bitter years before because I didn't make that decision. He did. But here I was in the same exact situation, taking care of my babies while they were sick. But because I made that decision to let him go and not be part of it, that I was not bitter or angry. So I realized, that when we are not getting to have our say, our input, when we don't get to make that decision and it's made for us, we can become very resentful, very angry, very reaction orientated. And so if I would have looked back years ago and thought to myself, Sheila, even if he was home, you would not have him in this room dealing with children, staying up all night. You wouldn't do that. So in this season of transition, just like the car loop situation, if someone forced me to have to drive and take 3 hours out of my life every day to be in a car loop, I'm embracing it. I'm accepting it. I'm saying, you know what? This is my life, and that's okay. These are my babies, and I'm going to go pick them up. I'm not going to, make them ride a very crowded bus that takes them an hour and a half to get home at school. I'm going to do this for my kids. But if someone said, nope, there's no buses, you're forced to do this, you have to do this, and I didn't want to, it would be a different story. I would be facing something coming at me. So you've got to look at transition and say, you know what, God, I don't want any of this. It doesn't mean I'm okay with it, right? It doesn't mean I'm okay to the point where I'm saying this is right, but it is what it is for now. And I have to trust you through it. And I have to trust that we're going to use this for good. So yeah, I get 3 hours of prayer time now. 3 hours of prayer time. Because driving and praying, sitting in the car, praying, talking to God, discussing things, I'm using it for good. So look at this season and ask yourself, am I fighting God on something that my fighting him isn't going to change a thing? I'm telling you, you're not going to make God change and bow to you, no matter how unhappy you are. There are people that refuse to laugh. They refuse to have any joy. They refuse to go out and live their life, go to the movies with a friend, go shopping. They refuse to do that because deep down they think, if I for 1 second let God know that I'm happy or enjoying myself or have peace, then I'm giving God a message that I'm okay with what's going on. I want you to really hear this, because this is a deep message, and I'll tell you right now, I did this. In the beginning of my stand, I was so upset with God that he wasn't changing my situation, that I refused to give him any inclination that I was okay. I had to walk around upset. I had to walk around hurt. I had to walk around angry. I had to walk around crying to show God how unhappy I was. Like that was going to make a difference. As God thinks I'm unhappy, if God knows that I'm crying, if God knows that I'm scared, if God knows, then he's going to do something about it. Well, guess what? Nope. God is going to do something about it, but he's going to change you so you are walking in joy. You are walking in peace. You are walking in trust. He's not going to give in to anything else. He's not going to spoil us in the wrong things. If your child, you're in the store and they take a temper tantrum because you're not buying them that toy, and you buy that toy just to shut them up, oh my goodness, parents, you've just done something horrible. You've just enforced in your child that all they have to do is throw a fit and they're going to get their way. Show you they're unhappy, manipulate you, and they're going to get out of you just to shut them up. That's not how God works. God works this way. Keep knocking, keep seeking, keep praying, keep asking. And just because you won't shut up asking, praying, seeking, petitioning, he'll open that door and give it to you, just like that neighbor in the word said he gave the neighbor gave the neighbor the bread just to stop the annoying asking. Now, the word doesn't say cry, beg in a angry beating on the door, right? It doesn't say don't be joyful. It doesn't say any of those things. It says be consistent, faithful, pursuing in your prayers in a trusting way. Philippians, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and pleading with thanksgiving. You need to check your hearts. We always need to have an attitude of gratitude. Always. If you're coming to God angry, you're coming to God bitter, you're coming in a hostile way, then you're going exactly the opposite of what God says, come to me. You need to be thanking him. And if you cannot find anything to thank him for, then your whole perspective is off. What breaks my heart is when a stander says, I've been standing in 7 years and I wasted my life. That means they didn't, if they really believe that. Sometimes we say those things and we don't really mean them, but there are some that actually mean it. They actually are hurt and they say, I can't believe I wasted all these years standing for someone and I'm done. They don't realize that standing was meant to change them, build their relationship with God, teach them who God is. And if they spent all that time and they didn't develop a deeper relationship with God, and if they walked away actually wasting 7 years, that was on them, not God. God was trying to get through to them. And I don't believe for a minute that God wasn't able to do something in those 7 years. Something good came out of it. Because that's who God is. See how I fell back on who God is. That is our foundation. Everything needs to be measured against that. I just had a conversation with someone yesterday. And they were saying, I'm afraid that this is going to be the rest of my life. And I said, you got to go back to the foundation. Is God okay with that? Is God okay with your spouse still being lost, still being deceptive, still being with a hard heart? No. God's not satisfied with that. He's never satisfied with anything less than the best. Why? Because his plans are for your welfare, to give you a future and a hope, right? If that is his plan, look at your child. Look at your own child. You want a good future for them. You want them to prosper, right? So, are you okay with them being something wrong in their life? Are you ever okay with that? No. Because you're a parent and you love them. That's your motivation. That's your heart for them. So if you're looking at your spouse and you're thinking, I'm worried that this is the rest of my life, then you've got to go back and say, you know what, God, I'm not okay with this. And guess what? I know you're not okay with this. And this isn't my burden to carry. You have a plan. I just need to keep reminding myself, God, you have a plan for me and for my spouse. And you're working it out. It's taken longer than I wanted. Not okay with how long this is taking. But I have to accept it. And my accepting it doesn't mean what I'm afraid I'm giving you that message that it means. Boy, I don't know if I was able to convey that. God, I'm going to tell you that I accept this journey. It doesn't mean that I'm accepting it for the rest of my life, because I know you don't accept it. I'm accepting that this is what this is to get us to what you say is to give us a future and a hope. So I'm accepting that this is what I have to go through right now to give us a better life. Ecclesiastes 7:8-11 says, better is the end of a thing than its beginning. And the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Be not quick in your spirit to become angry, for anger lodges in the bosom of fools. Say not, why were the former days better than these? For it is not from wisdom that you ask this. Wisdom is good with an inheritance, an advantage to those who see the sun. Ecclesiastes 7:8-11. Better is the end of a thing than its beginning. God has a plan. And that plan involves you transitioning in so many areas. Saying, you know what, God, this is my life right now. And it hurts, but it's for my good. I'm not going to withhold joy just to teach you a lesson, God, by saying, you know what, God, I'm not going to be happy because I don't want you to think for a minute that I'm okay with any of this. He knows you're not okay with it. But he also wants you to learn to be content, to not be anxious, to not be ripped apart, torn to pieces. He wants you to care about something that you haven't been able to care about, and that is the soul of your spouse. The relationship your spouse has with God. You need to confess that. God, I have never cared about your relationship with my spouse like I should. I have cared about my relationship with my spouse. I've wanted my spouse to love me more than I've wanted my spouse to love you. Lord, I confess my selfishness. I confess to you that I just have not grasped how much this is about personal relationship, intimacy, identity in you, purpose, that we have just ignored you, not wanted to do your will, not understood your will, There's so much, Lord, that we have just not seen. And that I want to confess to you, Lord, that we haven't lived as we should be living. We haven't put you as a priority. And that's what this is about, transitioning into that understanding. Be not quick in your spirit to become angry, for anger lodges in the bosom of fools. We've been foolish, Lord. We've been foolish because we've been saying, where are the former days? The former days were better than these. Yeah, the former days where we lived our lives for ourselves, lukewarm. We sure think that those were the better days. Those were the days that were leading us to hear, depart from me, I never knew you. We have it so backwards. I can't stress enough that we are in a place in our life where we need to grasp this. We are not of this world. Yet we keep trying hard to live in the world and make it. We try so hard to live not set apart. When God says you're set apart, you're not my friend if you're a friend of the world. And we're trying to fight God and change God's mind and say, you know what, God, I want to be part of the world and you need to change because I don't want to. We're not part of the world. The world is not God's friend. And we need to grasp that you got to start changing what you think about and accept. We have a lot of change in our mindsets to do, a lot of teaching our children that this is worldly. And if you're going to make it to heaven, you got to understand and you got to see it. See kingdom perspective and God's ways versus the world and the enemy's ways. Because the enemy caters to the flesh to keep you from making the end destination. Better is the end of a thing than its beginning. Absolutely, because where is our end? Our end is eternity with Him. And that means the end of this place that we're in, this temporary place. And when I started my stand, I didn't think about heaven. It wasn't part of my daily thoughts. I didn't think about my soul. I didn't think about my husband's soul. I just wanted right now to be peaceful. I wanted my life back. I wanted my husband to love me. And you know what's crazy is I was such a broken woman, and here I was fighting God to keep me back in that broken place. I was a controlling woman, a contentious woman. I was an ungodly woman in every way. I hated people. I hated men. I hated love. I hated so much things. I hated myself. And here I was fighting God. Give me all that back. Right? And God was trying to transition me. He put me in a transition and said, this is it. This is where we're at right now. Could I see what I'm in right this moment? Absolutely not. Did I see a ministry? Nope. Didn't see it. I just kept looking to the past going, I know in the past my husband was home. He was loyal. He was faithful. That's what I want. God looked to my past and said, okay, your husband was loyal and faithful, but he didn't know me. You were broken and contentious, controlling, manipulative. You slept all day. You ate till you almost died. And that's what you want? I'm not giving you that back. I want you to sit there and think about, what are you asking for God to give you back? Now, some of you did have a really good relationship with God and it's building, but did your spouse really have a strong relationship with God? Or were they just maybe going through the motions? Did they just know the word inside out, but they had no real knowledge of him in their hearts? We're to love him with our whole mind, our whole heart, our whole soul. All of us. Some of us just go through the motions. We know that word inside and out, but we're still living in this place where we don't believe God loves us. Because there's something in us. We're trying to do works. Works. But there's no intimate personal relationship. So there's something broken. If someone could just literally walk away and turn around and leave God, something's broken. There's an area. Look at King David. How he was able to murder, adultery, lie. There was an area in his life that was broken. So this was a really deep message today. Really deep message. You might have to go back and listen to it more than once. If you've got any questions over today's message, please leave them in the comments. I will try to start answering questions again. And tonight, there is a Zoom meeting where we have a couple who, she was the lost person. She left her husband after a few years of marriage, divorced him, married another man. He stood for 7 years. And that is going to be tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern time. Any other announcements? Revealed Magazine. If you guys want to support me, Revealed Magazine is my income. That's the way I make income. I do not make any income through the ministry whatsoever. The magazine, that's my income, and I tithe 10% to Revealed. I'm sorry, through Revealed, I tithe 10% of the magazine, my portion. I tithe into Marriage Revealed Ministries. So that is my sowing. So I get a percentage of the sales, and then I tithe. So that's how I make my income. Again, I do not make any, when you tithe to the ministry, when you sow to the ministry itself, I don't take in any income from that. When you watch the videos, and YouTube gives us a percentage of whatever that is, that doesn't go to me. That all goes to the ministry. So I am blessed when you guys sow into the ministry. We are using that money for some outreaches, some upcoming outreaches. We're doing a coat and shoe outreach right now for children. If you need that assistance, please reach out, and I will email you the application for that. Very excited to be able to support standers whose children need coats and shoes. That's the outreach that we're doing. We're looking into doing also an outreach for Thanksgiving. So these are your donations, hard at work to help and support standers. So we're really blessed to be able to do that. So I just wanted to encourage you how faithful God is to his word. That he loves you so much, and he's for you, not to bring you harm. If you believe that God is out to punish you, out to bring you harm, out to hurt you and destroy you, please seek God and understand that that's not what's going on. So God bless you guys. I love you. Have a great, great day. Bye-bye.